Whether you're new or a seasoned veteran, the key to getting great looking video is making the best use of your lighting setups. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 interview lighting setups that you can use on your shoots, whether they're on location and if you have to go run and gun. Do one outdoor setup with 2 variations, one shaping natural light and one shaping controlled light. Then we'll go indoors and do 2 setups, one stylized and one more corporate. We'll be using the Canon C80 for our camera, and don't worry about not having the same exact features or settings as I do, because after all, it's the principles that matter. So let's jump into it. So what we're going to do now that we're outside is take a look around at the environment and assess the lighting scenario for our interview setup. We'll take a look and see which environment, which background actually is going to look the best for both our foreground and our background. As you can see, it's sunny outside, and this area that we're in right now is actually mostly shaded with a little bit of lighting coming through the trees, creating a mottled look. Now behind me, the garden area is really nice. However, the background, as you can see in the camera, is much brighter than I'm currently exposed. And this is typically what makes shooting outdoors challenging, having a brighter background than your foreground. So if I grab a quick rough exposure of the foreground that we are going to be shooting in, and pan to my right, you can see that this area is a lot brighter than the area that we're shooting in. So that leaves us with this background over here. As you can see behind me, the background is still a little bit brighter than the foreground. However, there is depth here. There's no white walls behind us to reflect the light back towards us. So this isn't a bad area to use, but if you look over my other shoulder, this area is right in the middle, almost a perfect exposure. Because it's in the shade, the foreground and the background are the same exposure. So we're going to do 2 slightly different outdoor setups, one in the shade with just modifiers, the other with additional lighting to even out the background and the foreground. We have our subject sitting here in the shade. Behind her is this really nice looking stone pillar with some of the vegetation in the garden. So we have a diffusion in the form of a half silk. If we bring this in and cover our subject, as you can see, it's removed a lot of the modeling from the sun that's coming through the trees. If we take it away, you'll see the modeling is very splotchy, creating this uneven look on the subject. So we're gonna rig this up on a stand and see how it looks in the final shot. So as you can see with the diffusion, the subject is lit really well, evenly. However, it's very flat. So what we can do to create more depth is add shadows through the use of something called negative fill. So what we have here is a 5-in-1 reflector set to the black side for negative fill. As we bring the negative fill in, you can see on her right side that there is a deeper shadow than there was previously. So our negative fill, as you can see, is creating definition through shadows, adding contrast, and it's shaping the light that we have existing on our subject already. It's still following the principles of 3-point lighting in that it's adjusting the fill. So that was our first look, shooting in the shade. We have 2 pieces of modification, one to diffuse the light and one to block the light. Not a ton of gear, and you still created a really dynamic look with just 2 pieces of equipment. Now we're gonna move on to our second variation of the outdoor setup. As you can see, this looks really bad. The sun has moved position in the sky. We've lost a lot of the shade that was here in the first variation of this setup, but we're still trying to expose for the background while maintaining the consistent exposure between our foreground and the background. So we're going to use our own light to provide a consistent lighting source for our subject, and then we're going to use modifiers to control the light that's now coming into our scene. So the first thing we're going to do for this setup is expose for the background. I've set the camera to base ISO 3200 to preserve a little more highlight information. But we're going to add a lot of ND to compensate for that. So I'm going to add about 6 stops of ND. And this is starting to come along. So to continue working on this shot, we'll need to add some kind of modification to eliminate some of the light that's spilling in on our subject, a lot of the harsh sunlight. So what we're going to do is bring in the diffuser from the previous scene, place it overhead, and that's going to remove a lot of the, soften really, a lot of the mottled light that's coming in through the trees. Next, we're going to bring in our key light, the Nanlite Forza 500B, with the softbox to serve 2 purposes. Obviously, we need to light our subject, but the second purpose is that our softbox is so large that it's able to block the remaining sunlight that's coming in on our subject, which is pretty awesome. Now you might be wondering why we're using such a powerful light. Well, you need a lot of light to fight the sun. And this light, coupled with the fact that we're using 6 stops of ND, we need a lot of light to light our subject while also maintaining the consistent exposure between them and the background. I think this is looking good. If you wanted to tidy it up a little bit more, you could use the gold side of the 5-in-1 reflector that we used before and add a little bit more character to the scene. So I think we're done outside. Let's move inside into the AC and get started with our second setup. So now we've moved inside for our first interior setup, and we're gonna go for a more stylized look. We've got a really nice location here with some really gorgeous details, particularly along the windowsills where the frames of the window will be the basis for placing our subject. Let's walk through the set. We've already got our key light lit. We'll go on one by one, turn the lights on, and we'll see what the final product is. So like I said, we've already got our key light lit. The dome softbox that we have here on the key light softens the light and spreads it the way that you would expect an overhead ceiling light to. Let's turn that off and see what it looks like starting from 0. All you have now is the light from the window and the light from the practical lamp to the right of the scene. Now we've already added 2 stops of ND to the camera to get the windows to a nice exposure. So now let's turn the key light back on. And as you can see, we're starting in a really nice place. So follow me and come back here as we're going to turn on these 2 lights that we have. We'll turn this one behind the couch on, and this one here we have in the windowsill. So what we're doing here with these 2 lights is creating separation. Our larger pavo tube behind the subject is creating a stylized hair light, while the one in the windowsill is creating a window accent light. And I think it looks pretty good. So now follow me as we walk around to the opposite side. This is our fill side where we have the 500B from before. This is going to act as our fill light. So let me just turn this on. So now that we have the fill light on, you can see that we're bouncing it off the ceiling to even out the exposure in the room. Our color temperature is also set to 4000 Kelvin, and that's just warming up the scene a little bit more and creating a little bit of a difference between the key light, which is set to daylight, and this light. And also on this side, as you see behind me, is the same 5-in-1 reflector as before. We're basically killing a bunch of the reflection from this, this massive mirror, as you can see. So I'm really happy with this. I love the overhead light plus the fill. They created a really nice atmosphere in the room. Plus the hair light and the accent light in the window, I think looks great. So that was our first interior setup. Our second interior setup is going to be back in the office for a more corporate style interview. So let's head back there and we'll get started on our next setup. So we're here for our final setup, the second of the interior scenes, and we're gonna do your typical corporate interview. As you can see behind me, I'm very backlit. This office has large windows, and it's New York City, so there's tall buildings behind us bouncing that light back into the scene. We have the challenge of trying to manage the background exposure with our foreground exposure. We've got a bunch of lights set up around the room, so we'll take a walk around, turn on all the lights, and we'll see what the final result looks like. So the first thing that we did when we got into this office was we put a gel against the window. What kind of gel? This is an ND gel. What this ND gel allows us to do is it allows us to cut the light that's coming in from our background. You get to see all of the detail in the background, highlights, shadow information is retained, while also having a proper exposure for our subject. So for our key light, we're using the Nanlite 500B, which you've seen in our previous setup. I'm gonna turn it on and we'll see what that looks like in camera. So with our key light set to 100% intensity and in conjunction with the ND gel that we set against the window, we have a proper exposure so far between our background and foreground. So next we have this Nanlite Forza 300B, which is going to act as our fill light that's also being bounced. Let's turn that on and see what this does. So we have this light bouncing off a white curtain that's pulled in the office, creating a soft, even look on our subject's face. And the last piece that we have to complete our look is this pavo tube that we're using as a hair light to separate our subject from the background. Let's turn that on and we'll see what it looks like in camera. All right, so I think this looks pretty good. As you can see, we have all the lights on, ND on the windows. That's creating a nice exposure for the background. You can see all the details, see the buildings. We have a good separation of our subject from the background thanks to our hair light and our fill-in key. Overall, pretty good image. So those were the 3 lighting setups that you can use to boost the look and feel of your interviews. As always with filmmaking, lighting is an important part, and it's best to know how you can shape it to fit your scene. Which of the 3 setups did you prefer? Let us know in the comments below. I'm Sidney with B&H, and thanks for watching.